Hi, it's Kevin. You know, I learned a lot about my own personal sense of resistance and attachment through an experience which, after the fact, I recognize as perhaps more of a behavioral experiment, although not intentionally so. But first, a confession. I'll freely admit to a bit of a behavioral problem around a few types of food. Like, for example, these evil Jelly Bellies. You see, even though I just live a few minutes from the grocery store, somehow by the time I get home, half of the bag is missing. It's a mystery. So, a few years ago, well into my surrender experiment of the COVID years, I was on my 4-minute drive home from the store with a fresh bag of Jelly Bellies, 40 flavors, just like this one. Now, given that I was driving and attempting to remain safe, right, I didn't have the luxury of pearl diving. That is, digging through the bag of cherry or for the cherry or cinnamon or Dr. Pepper flavored Jelly Bellies, while strategically avoiding those nasty black licorice ones. You know what I'm talking about? So I simply plucked the jelly beans from the bag, one at a time, and without looking, placed them into my mouth. And you know what? I thoroughly enjoyed every single one of them, in spite of the fact that sometimes I couldn't even identify the flavor. In fact, I even got a black licorice, and it was actually quite good. Way, way better than I remembered it or expected it to be. And therein lies the lesson for me. I realized right then and right there in my very own mouth how much my thoughts and expectations, my personal preferences about those jelly beans I sought out or was attached to, and those which I avoided or resisted, actually shaped my very experience. So emboldened by this little experiment and this recognition of the impact of my thinking on my experience of what's real, I grabbed a small handful. Of Jelly Bellies, perhaps 6 or 8, or 7 in this case. And again, without looking, I popped them in my mouth. Now, it's possible that when I do this, I could grab a hot buttered popcorn, a cappuccino, a coconut, and a Tutti Frutti, a sizzling cinnamon, and a sun-kissed lemon, all in the same handful. And you know what? Every handful was delicious. In fact, it was like a spontaneous party breaking out of my mouth. Right then and there, I came to the realization that this was a great experiment to explore my own level of resistance and attachment based on my personal preferences or expectations. Because after all, releasing our resistance and attachments requires a great deal of behavioral flexibility on our part, doesn't it? So unlike what you often hear online, I'm going to suggest that you do try this experiment at home. Be well, my friends.